get going. So if you're trying to send us a comment, I hope you are.
There we go.
Is it working now?
Yeah, now I can see it. It was
Okay.
just where I couldn't see it on my computer. But now
Okay.
we're good. We're up and running. So comment away and we'll be able to see it.
Yeah, please let us know what you thought about this chapter, and because we want to cover what you guys thought too. We can tell you what we thought, but you might have gotten something totally different from what you read.
Yeah.
So I was saying that Moses, I really thought about Moses, and I thought about the story of Moses, and he was, he was a Hebrew child, an Israelite, and he had to be put in a basket to save his life when he was just 3 months old, and then he was raised. So he was from the Israelite tribe. Then to save his life, he was put into a basket, and then he was adopted by the princess of the Egyptian Pharaoh. So he was raised. He was Hebrew, Israel. Then he was raised Egyptian as a prince, as the son of the princess. So in royalty, and then eventually killed an Egyptian who was hurting a Hebrew, and then was kind of exiled, and then became a shepherd. So he did a lot of things before he was ever called on to free the people by God, and before the burning bush episode there. But I didn't realize something I was looking at here, and I was thinking, well, no wonder he was confused. I mean, goodness, he was
A lot going on.
yeah, he really did. Had a lot going on in his first 40 years, because all that was in his first 40 years.
Yeah.
Because it said then he was a shepherd in the Midianite wilderness there for 40 more years, and he was 80 years old when God spoke to him from the burning bush.
Mm-hmm. And what I kind of noticed, and I mean, I knew this, but I never really thought about it, is that it was very unexpected when God called him to do what he wanted him to do. It wasn't like Moses had been praying for, a mission. It was just, seemingly to him very
Out of the blue.
out of the blue.
Out of the bush.
Yeah, out of the bush when it happened, and it was, that had to be very, just, catch you off guard, and like, no thank you, I didn't ask for that.
Yeah, so the story of the burning bush was that he was out there tending his sheep, and he saw a bush on fire. Now, I don't know if that was a common occurrence. It don't sound like it would be to me, but you never know.
I would hope not.
Maybe lightning struck bushes
I don't
all the
like
time.
fires.
I don't know. You don't, do you? Maybe you thought Mama lit that.
Yeah.
But so he saw a burning bush, but he noticed it didn't seem like that it was the burning bush that was so odd to him, but the fact that the bush was not burning up.
Mm-hmm.
And then as he walked closer to it, God spoke to him from the burning bush and called him Moses, Moses, So, I think that'd be pretty shocking to anybody, don't you?
Yeah.
If a bush was on fire and I walked toward it and it started
He
talking to
talking
me,
to me.
yeah, that'd get my attention. But, the first thing that God started telling him was what he wanted him to do. And it right there on page 29, it says Moses was insecure and confused. Well, you think? The confused part. That really would be confusing. And he said, who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?
Yeah.
It'd be like us, wouldn't it? If he said, April, go up to Washington, D.C. and bring, I don't know.
Well, and you think about it had been 40 years since he had really associated with anybody other than his family, because he had, exiled to Midian and had been there
married and had kids.
By himself, just his family for 40 years, and now
herding sheep
is being asked to go, back into everything.
Yeah, and when I don't know if it told us here, but when I went back and read in Exodus, it was telling that the Pharaoh, the one that had wanted him dead for killing the Egyptian, was now dead. So nobody was actually still trying to kill him there, which that's a good thing. But and Moses may or may not have known that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he knew that. I don't
Well, you
remember.
wouldn't think he would be able. Like, how would somebody have gotten that information to him?
Yeah, out there while he's herding sheep. But
not gonna send him a text and let him know.
Yeah.
Like, how would he
right.
know that?
But God knew what he was doing, and I like that. Moses' true identity, abilities, and human limitations. God knew that he would enable Moses. So Moses was insecure. He was worried about it, but he also wasn't taking into account what God was going to do for him. And sometimes I think we're that way. We don't realize that whatever's happened to us in our past is preparing us.
Yeah.
Because somewhere down here it talked about God had been developing Moses his entire life to be the ideal man for this job. He was the right guy to travel back to the country where he was born and raised. He was armed with a shepherd's staff. He could communicate with the Pharaoh in the language because he had been raised there in the palace. Moses understood the Hebrew people and had lived as a shepherd, and also, he was going to have to shepherd 2 million people back across this desert that he had been in for the last 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew this.
Yeah.
He knew how to survive out there in the desert. And then at the bottom of the page, I love it. Who knew Moses' true identity, Moses or God? Well, Moses thought he knew, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said, God, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't speak.
Yeah. Well, I like the part about his earthly track record, where it says his track record and identity appeared cowardly, convoluted, and checkered. His thoughts about himself were not really positive or confident. And so that was, his earthly track record and his view of what he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And, so his identity,
What he saw
what
as
he
failure.
saw in himself was, somebody who was not able to do anything other than be a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And then
He didn't look at his past as being a training ground for what
Right.
God was preparing him to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it even said, like, if you ask his family,
yeah,
they
they
probably
would say
laughed
the
and
same
said,
thing.
that boy can't do that.
Yeah.
But, God, and we do the same thing, though, don't
Yeah.
we? Like, we say we can't do that, but we don't realize that if God's calling us to do something, He'll give us what we need. And He's probably been preparing us for it all along.
Yeah,
Even the things that we view as
failures are really
learning
stepping stones and
experiences.
preparing you
Yes.
and helping you see something a different way,
Mm-hmm.
so that when you get to that next point, you have those experiences.
Yeah. And skill set. As far as like the language that he knew, the living in the desert, all those kind of, and even direction.
Yeah.
Knowing how to get from point A. If he put
Uh-huh.
me out there, I'd need a GPS to get back over there to that place. I'd be
just
lost
sit
out there in
down
the
and
desert.
die.
Yeah, I would too. They wouldn't want me to lead nobody. Okay, so who knew? And obviously God. And then on the very next page, it shifts gears and it says, "Who knows your true identity? You or God?" And that that's something we need to think about. It's not just words. It's really. Who does know you better, you or God? Well, obviously God.
Yeah.
He made us. Sometimes I don't think I know myself very good. I kind of wonder, like, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? But and God, He knows why I did it or said it. He might not be happy about it, but He knows why. We got anybody commenting?
Kinsey said, "I think we can best be used when we are hesitant or feel weak or incapable, like Moses did. It makes us rely more on God when we answer our calling from Him."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really.
Yeah,
because
that's what,
sometimes when we feel too confident in something, we think we can do it
On
on
our
our
own.
own, and we're not relying on God to help us do it. We're just like, "I got this."
It's like that Joyce Meyer thing that I talked about last week, where she said God is attracted to your weakness
Yeah.
because that's the place that you will let Him shine, because you realize you can't do it.
Yeah.
But we really need to realize that we need to be partnered with God in everything. It takes some of us and some of Him, and He wants us to do our part. But at the same time, He wants us to realize that with His help, we can do anything. We don't have to second guess our own, talents or abilities, because He will provide it.
Yeah.
We got anybody else comment?
That's it so far.
Okay. Come on, y'all. Y'all need to help us out here. Tell us what y'all think. Let's see. What do you got next?
Well, next it gets into the 3 qualifications of how God knows us better than we know ourselves.
Why should we let God define us? So
and
what's
then-
the first one?
The first one is God has perfect knowledge of you. And this one kind of related to the devotion Kinsey posted today.
About the hairs on your head?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it was Taryn Wells.
Yeah, it was.
Which
I like him.
I love him and I really liked that.
He's the one that
But-
sings, if y'all don't know it.
Yeah.
Fully known.
Hills and valleys.
Yeah.
I do a great
We'll
rendition.
sing that for you in a minute.
But that kind of related, talking about the hairs on your head. And I liked where it said, He knows every question, loving thought, and secret sin rooted in your heart. And basically, He
Knows how much.
everything.
Every tear you've cried, I see that. And God knows your thoughts before you think them.
Mm-hmm.
He's heard every word, seen every text or internet post, and He remains the reigning resident expert on all things you related. And you know what is even better? He loves us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He knows and He loves.
Fully known and loved.
Yeah, Tarn Wells
Mm-hmm.
again. Now, what was there was a line from Kenzie's devotion today that I really liked. It was about God has full knowledge and access to the information, but you have to invite Him to be intimately entwined in your life. And there is a big difference between obtaining information about somebody. I mean, we could go stalk somebody, we could find out all kinds of stuff about them, but that doesn't mean that we know them intimately.
Right.
We don't know that because they have to consent to that. That's something that, and so God is waiting for our consent for an intimate relationship with each one of us, and that's what He wants, and He's waiting and knocking at the door and wanting us to have that relationship with Him. My brain ain't working exactly right. I think I need a little caffeine or
Loud in
something.
the sun too.
No, I don't think so. Let's see. What else you see?
Well, the next one.
Okay, so that was number one. The reason you should let God define you is God has perfect knowledge of you. Okay, number two.
God has complete ownership of you.
You know what I liked about this one was it said it boils down to the fact that God owns everything. He owns the world. He owns the earth. So all this other my this, my that, my right, my choice is all just because He don't just own me and you and everywhere we can. He owns everything.
Yeah. This one was a little bit harder for me. I had to read this one a couple times.
Well, what'd you end up getting from it?
Well,
after
I
you
don't
read it?
know. It was just, I feel like we spend so much time, talking about, oh, you don't own me. I make my own choices. I'm strong, independent, And so the thought of, being purchased or being owned from a worldly perspective,
Is a
that's
negative.
kind of a negative.
Yeah.
And so, when you talk about, oh, well, they're just owned by Him, that's a negative connotation to that. So, putting it back in this perspective kind of took me a minute to, read it. I mean, that God's in charge, but, hearing it in those words, I was kind of
That's because we live in a culture that would say,
Right.
Yeah.
And so it kind of takes a minute to, process that.
But I think
And,
if you process it and realize that we need to submit to Him and realize that He is in
Right.
charge of us, then it almost gives you a freedom that you didn't have before. And I think that's what they were talking about, the Kendrick brothers was talking about. It said His voice in our hearts reminds us, I own you.
Right.
And this one phrase coming to us individually has calmed us down and helped us to trust Him. As owner of our lives, God has the right to claim us, name us, lead us, and tell us who He wants us to be.
Right, because you want to take care of the things you own. So, when you think about it more in that perspective of oh, well, He cares more deeply for me because He owns me. I care about things that I own and I want to take care of them because they're mine. So, when you think of it in that
He wants to take care of us.
Right, that He
and
wants.
He is for us. He is for us.
And He wants to lead us and name us and tell us who He wants us to be.
Because He made us and He knows.
Right.
Yeah. If somebody made you, then they made you for if I'm a potter and I'm making a bowl, I'm probably making it with a specific thing in mind. Now, it ain't going to do too good as a glass, is it? It's just going to be a bowl.
Yeah.
It's not going to work as I don't know what else you make out of pottery. It's not going to work as a vase, is it? If I made it to be a bowl, it's got to be a bowl to be fulfilling its purpose. So when God makes us, He knows what He has purpose for us to do. Yeah.
We have a few more comments.
Okay. Good.
Kelsey said, The Creator gets to define His creation. He has to be our source of identity because He's the only one who can define us. We think our family or friends always have reliable opinions of us and like to always believe them as truth, but we don't even know about ourselves. We should be wrapping His truths about who we are, not residing in the negative thoughts, opinions from other people who don't even know us, including our own opinions.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to tell yourself, step back, self.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who I am. God says I'm loved and good, and I've really gotten into watching the Joyce Meyer little videos on Facebook. I really like those. They're really short. If any of you like to see that kind of stuff, but they're usually like less than 3 or 4 minutes. But I saw one today where she was saying that every day she stands up and speaks the words out of her mouth. I'm loved, I'm cared for, I'm an overcomer. She speaks the words that God has given her so that the devil will hear them coming out of her mouth. And then she'll say,
that self-fulfilling.
Yeah, she said every day. She said she's been doing that for 40 years.
I do that with my kids at school.
But that's, it does help you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And also it helps the devil to hear that, I'm not falling for your shenanigans. I'm an overcomer in Christ,
Well, and it's good to remind yourself of that.
It is. And it's good for the devil to hear it, and it's good for God to know that you're affirming it every day, affirming it to yourself.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Kinsey said, does it make you guys feel more comfortable or more vulnerable or exposed to know God knows everything you have done, felt, etc.?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well,
I think it's kind of both for me in a way.
I think
Like,
on the surface it'd make you feel more exposed.
Yeah, but I think the more you remind yourself of, even despite being fully known, you're still fully loved.
Mm-hmm.
So even though God knows the horrible thoughts and things that I've said and everything, I'm still fully loved despite all of those things.
Right.
So I think
He knows it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I was reading about, and I really liked it. It said, God knows what you're thinking, what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just go ahead and confess it to Him?
Right.
Get it off of your chest. And, and if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, that's a good motivation to stop.
Yeah.
Because you want to be pleasing to God, But, none of us are perfect, so there's plenty of things that God knows about me that I wouldn't, want to put on Facebook. But, but He knows, and He loves me anyway.
Yeah.
And all of us have things. So I guess a little of both. On the surface, it makes you feel a little more exposed, but then the more you think about it, it makes you feel good because, a lot of people, you wonder, like, would they know me if they knew X, Y, and Z?
I think that's why it's kind of comforting, because even though He knows everything, He still loves you. And there are some people who, even if they just knew a few things, they might feel differently.
So the love of people is conditional sometimes, or at least we feel that way.
Yeah.
Or some people it is. Now, some people would love you no matter what,
Right.
This is my baby, I love her no matter what. But the love of people is somewhat conditional. But the love of God is unconditional.
Right.
And that's why it's more special than any human love, because He already knows. So I think that's a really good point to make.
Yeah.
Number 3, God has ultimate authority over you. Again, that's kind of something that society would probably go, that's not a good thing. You don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You can't. Well, goodness, if He didn't give us the next breath, we'd be done.
Yeah.
He gives you every breath you take. So, yes, He has authority over you. He has authority over whether you live or die. He gave you your body. He gives you your breath. So, yeah, of course. He should. You got anything to add to that?
I liked in the illustration about, if it's been a few days since you read it, he talked about his daughter was a freshman and she was starting on the basketball team. She was a little bit worried that the other players and the parents would be mad that this freshman was starting. But he kind of told her, look, the only thing that matters is that the coach decided that you could do it. it was his call.
Yeah. I like that. It's his call. And
That's
it's
what I read.
His call.
It's his call. People can talk about it, but it won't change who's in charge.
And we get that in society,
Mhm.
don't we? Trying to define you as something that you're not.
Right.
You know, the society might try to tell you who you are. It's like a lot of like would be going on in a ball situation
Yeah.
like that. I know all of y'all have never had anything like that in a ball situation with a coach, but
Yeah.
but it's kind of like that. The yayers out there, you know, they're gonna yeah. Haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
And but the coach has the ultimate
Have the
call,
final say.
regardless of what everybody
Yeah.
else says. I saw a good example of that one time. I won't name names, but one time they were picking a all-star team, and there was a little girl that wasn't picked to be on the team, and the coach saw the girl play, and she said, "I know that one wasn't picked to be on the team," but she went over her mama and said, "You have her at the all-star practice Monday morning or Monday afternoon or whatever it was." So even though she wasn't picked by the coaches to be on the all-star team, it was the coach's ultimate call. And the coach said, "I saw her play. I want her, so I'm gonna have her."
Mm-hmm.
And you know that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes people underestimate us,
Mhm.
and people don't see what God sees.
Well, we
in us.
underestimate ourselves.
We do. But you know it's really hard when you're hearing a lot of outside
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to you know really even have confidence in yourself, because people will tear your if you do have confidence in yourself, people
Yeah.
sometimes tear it down.
Yeah, and it's
Mm.
easy, like we've talked about in the past weeks, it's easy to let those things
Because
get
we
to
hear
you.
those. We hear that
Louder and
negative. Yeah.
more clear than any of the positives.
Yeah. So the coach in this case is God, and He is the creator. He gets to define you. He's the coach. He's the team leader.
Yeah.
And He gets to define you, and He gets to say what He wants you to do.
Mm-hmm.
The culture will seek to define you. Other people in your life will seek to weigh in on who you are. Even in a I like that about the
Mhm.
intelligence test or EQ quiz. It sounds like me, you know. I like all that. I like that kind of stuff.
Our Enneagrams.
Yeah,
or tests
we like to
like
take these
take.
little weird tests, you know. So what's your EQ, emotional quotient? Is that anyway? Our certified psychological test may seem like some expert has the right to define you, but it's not true. And it says, "Not so, Moses." Yeah. God knows us better and more completely than we will ever know ourselves. Only our God made you and can define who you are. You are who He says you are, period. I love that. Mm-hmm. If you ain't got that highlighted in your book, you need to highlight that. That's on page 32. You are who He says you are, period. And the sooner you can discover that and find out what He says, the better off you'll be. And that is the truth, isn't it? That's what I hope we find in the next section of the book here. Mm-hmm. Like these first 3 chapters are kind of setting us up to talk about why this is important.
Right.
Why this is something that's important for us to study.
Kind of the intro.
Yeah, 3 chapters plus an intro that are kind of the intro.
Yeah.
They took their time about doing the intro.
It.
Yeah. But I think that's good because it's getting us kind of in the mindset of identity. And the next part here is the key to identity of everything. It talks about the apple.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know about the apple or the apple tree, you can look at the other, you know.
Right.
If you want to learn about the apple tree, a lot of what you need to know is probably found by looking at the apple.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know about the apple, you probably learn a lot about it by looking at the tree it came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're the apple in this scenario, when we want to define ourselves, one of the best things we can do is look at our tree, which is God. Mm-hmm. Look at what we came from, who made us, what tree did you fall from? You know, I fell from God's tree. We all fell from God's tree. And so that's why we need to, you know, study more about God to know more about ourselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What else you got there?
I liked that it kind of just set up, and it had kind of been talking about those 2 questions the whole chapter, but set up the 2 questions of who is God and who am I,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of think about for the next 2
Yeah.
pages and through the rest of the book. But I liked what it said about since everything God says and does flows out of who He is, and since He is true to Himself and functions with perfect integrity, He will not say or do anything contrary to His nature. And then a little bit further down, it talked about since everything flows out of who He is, like knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Where's that at?
on page 33.
Okay.
Kind of all throughout that page, like at the top, it starts talking about it, and I liked where it talked about like everything is defined through God, and even like sin is described as being ungodliness or unrighteousness. So still it's put in the context of God.
Yeah, I like that too.
And I liked that. I thought that was interesting that I hadn't really thought
read
about that.
Everything is defined by how it relates to God. I thought that was really interesting. I never thought about that.
And like darkness is the absence of light, and cold is the absence of heat.
If you want to better understand evil, then don't study evil, study God, because if something's in the dark, you need the light to study it, don't you?
Right.
And the light is God. Yeah, so what is in the darkness is revealed by turning the light, not by dwelling in the dark. If you stayed in the dark, you wouldn't learn a whole lot about it, would you?
Yeah, I like that, by not dwelling in the darkness.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes it's easy when you get in that like headspace of like kind of being in a dark place. It's easy to dwell in that. It's easy to like stay in it and get deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
So I liked that of what's hidden in it is revealed by turning on the light. Because once you turn the light on, then you can kind of fully process what it was, you know, that was affecting you. So I really liked that.
The greater knowledge a person has of God's character and attributes, the greater their foundational knowledge and understanding will be of the rest of the world. He's created the wisdom for knowing how to live rightly as a result. And so it jumped from our knowledge, like on just a common sense kind of platform, to like really high intelligence. They talked about these inventors and scientists, and I never thought about that really. You know, that all the ones that it named there on page 34, all of those were they were religious people and believers and worshipers of God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Galileo, Robert Boyle, some of a whole list there. Some of them I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to go down the list there. But yeah, all that, you know, all that they had to know a lot. I mean, I don't know how these scientists come up with stuff. It's way over my pay grade. But you know, right there in the middle of 34, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." And that was from Solomon, who was the wisest man to ever live. And, you know, fear of the Lord can be interpreted a lot of ways. Respect for the Lord, not necessarily like fear and trembling, I don't think, but just like the ultimate respect for the Lord is the beginning of true wisdom. So when you realize that you're His creation and He is your Lord and He is above you and He is in control of everything, that's when you can really start to live and be a wise person.
Yeah.
We got any comments from anybody?
Several people saying they're here with us,
Okay.
Tammy and Marge. So thank y'all for joining us. And several other people I can see have joined recently.
Okay, good.
So
Thank y'all
thank y'all for watching
Yeah.
with us.
Just jump in anytime. We like to hear what you got to
But
say.
I really liked that next paragraph down on 34 where it said, if you were to ask God to help you understand and grasp who you truly are, He would not only honor that request, but part of His answer would be an invitation for you to focus on Him and get to know Him better.
I actually put out beside that pray. Because to me, that's like a prayer. You know, if you pray and ask God to understand it, like if I say, Lord, help me to understand and grasp who I really am, that's what, and then it says He will honor that and help you understand Him.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's all pray that.
Yeah.
You know,
2 in 1. Right?
Yeah, you get a 2 in 1. You pray for one thing, you end up with 2. With this in mind, let's go back to the moment when Moses asked God His name. Do you remember that part? When Moses was, you know, whining and crying and saying, now, if I go, He ain't gonna let me. He's gonna say, who are you? Who sent you? And I'm gonna say, God. And they're gonna say, which God? Because they had a lot of gods that they worshiped. And so he was asking God, who am I going to say sent me? And God said, I am who is. Tell him I am sent you. And, you know, when you kind of look at that, and I like the way it said initially it sounds like a non-answer or something so obvious as to not be helpful. I am who I am. I mean, yeah, when you think about that, what's that mean?
Yeah.
I am who I am. But then on the next page there on 35, it gives you a whole list of some different attributes of God that come from knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
He is who he is.
Yeah.
You know, he told you that. And me and Cass, I think both, did you mark some that you liked, especially on that? I went through there and marked some of the ones I liked. I liked where it said the implication is, and then if you go over on the chart, it says God is, and it gives you the one word, and then it gives you scriptures to back that up. One of my favorite ones right there is about halfway down where it says he is as he is, not anything false. He is true. I like that because I love the honesty, I love the pureness, I love the truth that when God says something, where, you know, when he says it, it's true.
Yeah.
He's not capable of lying. He's
Right.
not capable of stretching the truth. He don't do that. He's God. It's only true. And then the next one I like so much is he is revealing what is unseen. He's the light, like shining the light.
Too.
Yeah, shining the light into the dark places and showing us.
Yeah.
And then I like he exists as himself consistently. He's faithful. Yeah. And he is as he is without changing. He's eternal. I like this one right here. He is communicating in a known way. I mean, we all know God's intelligent. I mean, look at all the stuff he created, my goodness. But not just that he's intelligent, but that he is communicating with me in a way that I can understand.
Presents it in a way that we can understand.
Even me that, didn't invent the, didn't come up with calculus and the printing press and the telescope. He's putting it out there for even somebody like me that I can understand.
Right.
Yeah. Which ones did you?
I had that he exists as he currently is. He's present. And then I also liked he exists by his own ability. He's powerful.
Yeah.
And then a few of the ones you said I also have.
And then that last one, I guess, is my very favorite because I'm all about that. He is revealing all this about himself. He is intimate. So he's not holding back anything from us.
Right.
He even gave us Jesus. He's willing to give everything to us, and we just got to open the door and invite him in, so that it's more than a transfer of information,
Right.
so that it's a transfer, a relationship, because that's kind of up to us. He's already told us, I'm here, and I want a relationship with you, but you got to want one with me. So
Yeah, we've kind of talked last week with Vicki about like the information and transformation.
Right. And both are
and
important.
You can get both.
Both are important. I think it's important when we read the Bible to get information. And, knowing the Bible is very important.
Yeah.
Because then when situations come up, you have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And you can, spout it out, or you can
remind yourself
or encourage people that
Right.
need to know. I don't know enough scripture. Some of it I know, I get the gist of it, but I can't really tell you, like, that would be, give me a minute. Where's my phone? Like, let me look it up right quick. But I wish I had memorized more scripture as a child. So if you're out there and you have grandkids or you have young kids, teach them the scriptures. It is so important. And when their little minds are so spongy and soft and can absorb all that, now's the time.
Well,
The
that's
books of
most
the Bible,
ones
right?
I remember is what I learned when I was young.
Right, and that's why I wish I would have known more. But
Like just spouting it off.
books of the Bible, scriptures, Bible stories. When the girls were little and we did Sunday school, we used a book that it had a picture about this big for every lesson. And what we did was I would write it up at the bottom. I'd write the story up after we taught it. And I would hang it all around the room, so we had it going across
Sunday
every
school
wall. Yeah, around the Sunday school room. And so then the kids every week would look around it, when they had free time, and still they still remember the pictures, and I do too.
I'll picture. Okay, now that was
Like
over
Gideon
there on that
or-
wall by that, and that's how I remember
Yeah.
it. Is
So if you have opportunity
when I read
to,
the stories, I picture their faces the way they
were on those
in
pictures.
Those pictures.
yeah. So if you have opportunity to impact young people, please do that, because you will never know what a blessing that will be to them at some point in their future. They may not realize it right now, but when they're older, they will know, and they will appreciate those Bible stories, those scriptures, those memorizations, all those things that'll stay in their little minds. So that's just a side note I threw in. I didn't really come from this
Extra
book.
tidbit.
Yeah, extra tidbit there. But okay, so your identity will become the most clearest to. I don't think that's the way that's said. Will become the clearest to you, most reflective of reality, and clarifying in terms of your future as you grow in your understanding of God. And that's really what we're looking for here, I think, is to help us in our future, you know,
Yeah.
to help us in where we're going, because we're all on this journey called life, right? And we'd like to know more about ourselves and more about what it is that God has in store for us. So that's where we're headed, right, with this. What else you got?
I had the will give you growing knowledge and then of yourself. I liked that, and then to know Him is to also know you.
Yeah. So I think as we get to the end of this first 3 chapters and the introduction, which is all part of what I'm going to call the introduction, I think as we get to the end of this first part, what we can take from this is identity matters. If I've taken one thing from these, what we've read so far and talked about so far, I think it would be, I've been going back to this when Jesus was baptized, and you know, when John put him under and brought him back up, and the voice from heaven said, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased."
Yeah.
And I could just picture that in my mind, and I had never before reading this, I'd never thought about what a powerful affirmation
Right.
of God's being pleased with Jesus that was. And I mean, that was an audible voice that everybody could hear and understand, and that was before he had preached a sermon. That was before he had done a miracle.
anything.
That was before that was at the beginning of his
Yeah.
ministry. And you know, God poured that affirmation out on him, and that became his identity. I mean, and that was so important. So if I take one thing from these, it is that our identity is so important in being able to do what we need to do for God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, you know, it was important for Jesus, and if it was important for Jesus, it's really important for us, isn't it? I said that he was God's son, and that was where he drew his strength through prayer. His purpose was that he aligned with God, and his boldness and compassion came from knowing the Father. So that was an intimate knowledge that he had, and so everything that we are, we draw from God.
Yeah.
What else? We got any more comments?
Jerry said she is watching with us. She's
Oh,
here.
good. Hey, Jerry.
And then Kelsey said, yes, God doesn't hold back. We can't mistake God giving us an answer we don't like or telling us to wait on His timing with God withholds His information or plans for me or leaves me in the dark. So
Sometimes, you know, we ask God for something, and the answer we get is no. You know, sometimes that's not the answer we want.
Yeah.
Or maybe the reason you're not hearing something loud and clear because the answer is wait.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing for me. Ooh, I'm not good at waiting.
I'm not either.
I've been on a learning curve for this waiting game, and I'm still not getting real good at it. But Lord, I've had enough practice lately.
Yeah.
But I think maybe this Corona thing has helped us all learn to wait a little more, because we can't do what we always have done. We gotta wait, you know. We gotta, you know.
Yeah.
It's just
Be patient.
be patient with people. Be patient with things that we need to get. You know, everything's kind of slowed down.
And even ourselves, because we can't do
We can't do what
the
we
things we could before we want to do, and we have to just wait and be in that kind of holding pattern.
Yeah.
But Kinsey said, I just saw this post from Bianca Olthoff
Oh yeah, I like her.
that says, the lie is that you have to find yourself. You aren't lost. Discover who God created you to be. It's a journey. Take your time. It's a process. Don't rush. It's a dance. Hear the beat. It's a party. Just show up. It's rough. Give yourself grace. Like an old wise man once said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be.
Yeah, it's like a forward. I see like an arrow. You know, an arrow. As long as you're moving in that direction in a godly way and making progress, you might move like this turtle slow today. Tomorrow you might take a good little jump. You might just stand still one
Yeah.
day, but you're always heading this way. And then, you know, we're all human. We're not going to always move in the right way, but the beauty of it is when you get off track, get back on track as soon as possible.
Well, and there's the thing about the bow and arrow, you know, like when you have to pull the arrow back. So before it goes forward, it has to come back.
Ah.
So like we're gonna have setbacks, and we might, you know, get pushed down or get pushed back, but that's kind of setting you up. Kind of
Hey,
like
that's kind of like giving you more momentum,
Uh-huh.
isn't it? Because that's where it gets its momentum.
And that's kind of like with Moses. You know, he was outcast and, you know,
40 years in the
40
wilderness.
years, and then that was kind of like the getting him ready for that. So I think sometimes, you know.
And if you've read a lot of the Old Testament, you'll find there's a lot of people who really had to have a lot of time, like in the wilderness, before they. And even Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days being tempted by the devil before he really started his ministry. So if you're in that time right now where you feel like you're isolated or you're an outcast or what, you know, you just, and during Corona,
Yeah, I
we
think a
might
lot
all
of us
kind of
feel
feel,
that way right
yeah,
now.
and maybe it is. Maybe it's a collective. I've heard so many people say that they feel like this is, it's getting us ready for the end of time, you know, that Jesus is coming back soon, and maybe this is, you know, Corona may be like, you know, I mean, no man knows the time or the date when that's going to happen, but maybe we're all suffering a little isolation now, getting us ready for the rapture, you know, I don't know. I just say be ready all the time. Bible says be ready, right? With or without Corona.
Huh? I'm trying to keep
She's
up
trying to
with
read and I'm
comments.
trying to pick at her. So has anybody got anything else they need to add? Or want to add? Or would like to add?
Jerry mentioned about like grandkids and like teaching them stuff about the Bible, that she was really impressed with her granddaughter Laurel when she they had went to a lake, and her granddaughter told her, "Mama, did you know that Jesus walks on water?" And so she said that she was proud of her for, you know, knowing that really
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
So,
And kids love to hear the Bible stories. I know I used to read them to y'all all the time. We had so many different little Bible story books, and they'd pick out their favorites, and then they'd want me to read it, you know. But that's the way to do it. Read it to them, and then when I tell you, if you're an adult and you get an opportunity to teach kids, that is how you will learn more about the Bible than you've ever learned on your own. Is studying to present it to kids. That's how I learned a lot of what I know, and I don't know near enough. But what I do know, a lot of it came from I would think, okay, I need to tell the story, and that a lot of them know this story already, but I need to give them some additional
Extra.
something that they didn't know. And what I would try to do at the end of every Sunday school class, I would say, did you learn something that you did not know before? And I would want every one of them to say, yes, they learned something, you know. And even if it's a very familiar story. And I think we as adults can still do that. When you hear a story like today, like the Moses, if you go back and you read that, I promise you that you will learn something. Make it a challenge to yourself. What can I learn about the story of Moses and the plagues that I did not know before? Because there's a lot to know in that story. We were talking about the foreskin, the Zipporah. You know, God was going to kill Moses. I seems like I vaguely remember reading that before, but it was a whole. I had to go and do.
drama.
Yeah, I had to go and do some extra research on that. So if you don't know that story, Exodus, maybe like 4, I think 3 or 4, yeah, about Zipporah and God wanting to kill Moses. And anyway, go read it. You'll.
No spoilers here.
No, I'm not going to take. Well, I read a bunch of stuff about. Anyway. Go read it. And then you can send me a message if you think that you don't get, because I researched it a lot. Anyway, Cassie, that's a whole nother thing, Mom.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, we might finish a tad early tonight. Now, next week, this will be starting part 1, intentionality, how your story begins. I'm going to try to make it a goal next week that we're going to cover chapters 4 and 5. Now, we may not cover them quite as deeply as we've covered these, but I thought this was really needed to get us a good start on this.
And they're not long. I'm looking at them right now. The 2 chapters combined are only 14 pages.
Okay.
So that'll be super doable if you're not a big reader, you'll be able to knock it out in a few minutes. So
Yeah. So for next week, chapters 4 and 5. Now, and another thing that we haven't talked about that I would like to say is that anytime during the week that you have something like as you're reading Ephesians, so we'll try to cover chapter 2 of Ephesians next week too. As you're reading that and you find something that's interesting to you or touches your heart or whatever, feel free to post it.
yeah.
You know, you guys can post. Y'all are a part of this group. It's not just us that can post things. Anybody can post.
Yeah, and
And
sometimes
please
if
do.
you try to wait, you'll forget.
Mhm.
So if it's something that you underline or make a note of that you really like, go ahead and post it so we can look at it more, because I'm sure if you liked it, we'll like it too.
Yeah, and other people, you know, that way we can talk on it. We don't just have to talk once a week.
Yeah.
We can talk a little here and a little there,
Mhm.
back and forth. So I hope y'all are enjoying the book. I'm enjoying it, and I'm excited about getting to the part about us more personally here, how your story begins.
Yeah.
And I hope that this will be very meaningful to you. Now,
I read chapter 4 today just to kind of get a little bit of a head start, and it's really good. So I think this next part is going to
Yeah.
be.
I've read it, but I've
Really,
already
really
forgot it. I'm
good.
going to have to read. I've read, like, all that up to about 12 or 13, but I'm going to have to go back and read it again. But now also, so we'll be back next Tuesday, and then next Thursday will be our meeting.
Oh yeah.
That's right, the 30th, right? So next week, next Tuesday, we'll be back here, and then we'll
Double
remind
dose
you
of
again.
us.
Yeah, so you'll have to look at us twice next week. So I'm looking forward to the meeting. I don't have all the fun goodies set up that I had before. It'd probably just be me, but maybe y'all can stand me by myself every once in a while. But okay, so anything else anybody wanted to say before we?
Sue said, I'm really enjoying this study so much, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about myself. I appreciate all y'all do. And then Tammy said that she's loving the book.
Thanks, y'all. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody that's taking part and everybody that's watching that don't want to comment. You know, if you don't have a comment, that's okay. But we're glad you're coming in, and we're thankful for the ones that are commenting and taking part. Okay, so let's close out in prayer, and we'll let y'all get back to your Tuesday evening. Dear Lord, we're so thankful to be here tonight together with all our friends online. And Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to study your word, to study this book, to help us to draw closer to you. Lord, I just pray that you'll help us to learn more of you and more about who you want us to be. Lord, it's so exciting to know that you created each one of us and that you have a special purpose for us. Lord, I just pray that each and every person taking part in this study will gain some insight into you and into themselves, and that we will better be able to serve you through that knowledge. We ask you, Lord, to watch over all those who are sick tonight, all those who can't be with us that want to be. And Lord, we ask you to watch over us till we meet again next Tuesday. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And we'll see y'all next week. Thanks.
Thanks for watching.